All right, y'all, welcome to the show. We are all over the place today. So in just a second, have some horrible news coming out of Gaza, as per usual. The Israeli government is being very upfront about the fact that resettling Gaza is on the agenda. And you're going to see a short news clip here from Sky News of them already doing that. So there's a lot to say there. Then we'll get to this incredible CNN article, which I'm not kidding is probably the single worst piece of propaganda I've ever seen in my life. It's about Israel and Gaza, and it tries to make you feel bad for the mass murderers. I wish I was kidding, but I'm not. So we'll do that as well. We have some massive new polling numbers that are phenomenal for Kamala that I'll share with you. We have Jon Stewart versus Tim Walz on the issue of Dick Cheney. That comes up. We have Tim Walz absolutely flaming Elon Musk, Obama, brutalizing Trump in a rally speech. And then, of course, huge news that broke yesterday where you have now a third person who was in Trump's administration and inner circle who's saying in no uncertain terms, yeah, he's a fascist. That's what he is. So just incredible stuff. Without any further ado, we'll jump into it in a second. You guys know the drill. Everybody do me a huge favor. Please subscribe to the channel. That helps out massively. And I want to send a massive thank you to everybody who supports this channel on Patreon. You can support below or tip with that thanks button on YouTube. Remember, as I always point out to you guys, I've never once had a conversation with an advertiser in over a decade of doing this job. I'm very proud of that fact. So we build it through small dollar donations from you guys and through memberships on Substack for Crystal Kyle and friends, and of course the default ads on YouTube. So, all right, without any further ado, we'll jump into it here. So let's start with this clip here. This is Sky News, and they're on the ground right by the Gaza border. And I want to show you what's currently happening there and what Israelis are saying. This is some wild stuff.
From this field, you can see Gaza on the horizon, a shattered landscape. But these people would all like to go and live there. These are the settlers in waiting, keen to start a new life, to annex Gaza for Israel. But what of the Palestinians who live in Gaza now? Most we spoke to suggested they should be expelled, but some here were even more extreme.
I just think we need to kill them, every one of them, and that's it. And if not that, because the country will not let that happen, the government. Just the least we can do is just kick them out of our land.
I need you to understand that's not an uncommon opinion in Israel. It's not. It's not at all. I remember growing up, learning about the Holocaust in school, understanding this concept deeply of never again. But of course, when we said never again, in our minds was never again to anybody. Never again to anybody. When they say never again, clearly what they mean is never again for us. But we get to do it to others if we feel like it. The ease with which she said, kill them all. How casual it was. You don't get to that place unless you have fully and completely dehumanized the other side. And that's what happened. And, shouldn't be surprising. She's at a Resettle Gaza rally. So clearly, she's not going to be too concerned with human rights and justice.
This is our home, this is our land, and we deserve it.
Settling Gaza was once a fringe idea, but now it's suddenly mainstream. The National Security Minister was here, telling the crowd that it was the moral and correct solution.
The truth is that this is the most moral, the most correct solution, not under force.
It's a government packed full of religious, fundamentalist extremists and fascists and ethnostaters. That's what it is. That's what it is. This is a supremacist culture. You have to call it what it is.
It's perhaps the biggest draw. A woman who spent 50 years urging people to seize land and settle in the West Bank. She told me Gaza could be occupied even while soldiers were still fighting. How do you imagine the war will end to let you live in Gaza?
While the war is continuing, we will fill the areas that were liberated with Jewish community.
Across the neighbouring field, a counter-protest from people who see the mere idea of settling in Gaza as repellent, inflammatory, and worryingly popular.
God bless these people, because again, this opinion in Israel is a very, very tiny minority. It is. It just is. I remember when that poll came out, what was it, like maybe about 2 months into the genocide? It was only 4% of Israeli society that said the IDF had gone too far. This was when they had already bombed schools and hospitals and UN buildings and killed journalists and destroyed the infrastructure. And there's only 4% that said they went too far. So this is like a very, very tiny minority, and they're very brave because also there are official legal consequences for speaking out against the government like this. And in this instance, you have a situation where the illegal settlers and the government are in lockstep, as you could tell by Itamar Ben-Gvir, being at the event. And you can get put in prison for this. You absolutely can.
It's no one's right and it's no one's duty, and what they're doing is illegal. What they're doing is A, illegal, B, it's going to cause incredible problems.
The people gathering here say it would be a privilege, a right, even a duty to settle in Gaza. We spoke to a couple with 3 young children who said they were excited at the prospect. But as we spoke, you could hear the thud of shelling. Gaza, which is just 2 miles in that direction, is under attack again. Israel's focus was once again trained on Jabalia in northern Gaza.
Look at that, like a modern-day Trail of Tears. Look at that.
Here, people have been rounded up, men separated from women and children. Israel says it is offering them safe passage, that hundreds have already gone. But as they were leaving, more airstrikes hit this cursed town. The people of Jabalia, like so many across Gaza, feel besieged and battered. And yet, just across the border, there are others who are desperate to move in. Adam Parsons, Sky News, near the Israel-Gaza border.
Now, when I said early on that Israel's going to resettle Gaza, that was viewed as a conspiracy theory. That was viewed as me reading too much into the situation, being too hard on the government of Israel. I was castigated for saying, I think they're going to resettle Gaza. Now, it's very clear to everybody who's paying attention, that's exactly what's going to happen. And for these people here in Gaza, who are being bombed relentlessly, I'm sure it's okay because Israel will say, hey, you need to go to this other place, which is a humanitarian safe zone. And then it's not like they have a track record of bombing the humanitarian safe zones that they say are safe and also the roads on the way to said humanitarian safe zones. They do that all the time. All the time. I mean, we just got a report from Dropsite News earlier that Israel has announced that there are 6 journalists who they say are members of Hamas and Islamic Jihad, and they're making it very clear that they're going to target these journalists. They've already killed over 100 journalists. In fact, if I remember correctly, I think the actual number is over 130 journalists that they've killed. So they're just broadcasting this stuff. We'll get to a story either later today or tomorrow where there was an Israeli government official who gave a speech who's doing the exact same propaganda that they did previously in Gaza. Remember when they released some goofy, cartoonish digital video that they cooked up where they said, the reason why we must go after this Gazan hospital is because there's a Hamas command and control center underneath. And to prove my case, here's a Bugs Bunny-looking cartoon that we just made up 5 seconds ago. And so then they put this out there, use that to then attack and bomb that hospital. And then, oh, would you look at that? After the fact, everybody realizes there was no Hamas command and control center underneath. That's totally bogus. There was like 3 guns by an MRI machine, right? Which they probably planted there themselves. So it wasn't true. Now they're doing the exact same thing with the Lebanese hospital. The exact same thing with the Lebanese hospital. We've already seen over 2,000 people killed in Lebanon. Obviously, we've seen about over 50,000 people killed in Gaza. And that's a super conservative estimate. Remember, guys, there was the Gaza healthcare letters that were released the other day. This is 99 Western doctors who were in Gaza who are saying in no uncertain terms, I saw the most hideous things you could ever imagine. Never in my life, and I've been in 1,000 conflict zones, never in my life have I held a child's brain in my hands, and that has now happened repeatedly. We've had countless children come in with gunshot wounds directly to the heart and directly to the head. They are assassinating, they are murdering children, terrorizing children on purpose, because they don't view them as human. They view them as less than. They view them as future terrorists, and so they're killing anything and everything that moves. That's what's happening. And so you have, they say it's like 118,000 minimum that are dead in Gaza. Then you have The Lancet, which says direct war deaths and indirect war deaths. That's 186,000. I mean, the numbers are getting astronomical. And understand, Never in human history, when we're in the midst of a conflict like this, have you had the accurate numbers in real time. It's only after the fact you get a better sense of it. And even then, you don't get an exact number because some people have been killed and dumped in mass graves, and they will never, ever be identified. We'll never know their names. We'll never know their stories. We'll never know about their families. We'll never know about what they went through and their dreams and their hopes, etc. They're just nameless, faceless people who were murked by Israel and buried in a mass grave, of which, by the way, there are countless of them that have already been discovered around Gaza. That's what we're looking at. And this is the conversation that's happening within Israeli society at the same time they're carrying out an ethnic cleansing and a genocide. This is the conversation. By the way, she was a young person who said kill them all. That was a young person. A crazy fact about Israel is that the younger generation is actually way more far right than the older generation. That does not bode well for the future of Israel. Not by any stretch of the imagination. And so here you go. So something that was considered a conspiracy theory when I mentioned it very early on, proven 100% correct. They are going to resettle Gaza. And the final point here is, well, hold on. We were told from the U.S. government and from Joe Biden that Israel is waging a war of defense and they're super surgically going after Hamas, and that's what's happening, and we're working night and day on a ceasefire. And then you get all of these horror stories coming out of Gaza, like the healthcare letters like we just talked about, like these government-sponsored events to resettle Gaza, like the genocidal statements from various people at the top level of the Israeli government. You get all these things, and what's going to happen? When something comes out that bucks the U.S. narrative on this issue, they just won't acknowledge it. They'll just sweep it under the rug. They'll just pretend like nothing ever happened. They'll pretend like there weren't just giant events to resettle Gaza. They'll just pretend like that's the case. And again, they'll still castigate you as a conspiracy theorist if you say, this is a war of aggression on the part of Israel. This is a war of conquest and expansion on the part of Israel. If you bring that up, they will act like you're the crazy one, even though all the evidence proves that's true. All of the evidence. So I've never seen a more disgusting thing than this. Never in my lifetime did I think we'd get to this point with any conflict anywhere. And maybe that's naive of me. It probably was naive of me. But like, I remember back under Obama, when they bombed that hospital in Afghanistan, it was like the biggest scandal of all time. And we went and got the names of all the people who were killed, and we discussed it. And, you know, the U.S. said, holy shit, we were told from the troops in Afghanistan, the government troops, that this was the Taliban was there and that's why we did it, and our bad. And like, I remember all of that, right? Now we're at a place where over 30 hospitals in Gaza have been bombed. Over 30 of them. And when the first one got bombed, I remember the pro-Israel types screaming, bro, it actually wasn't Israel. It was Islamic Jihad. It was a misfired rocket with, a size of munition that they 100% don't have and can't inflict that sort of damage. But it was them. It wasn't us, bro. And a bunch of idiots either got pushed into being agnostic or flat out believed the propaganda and said it was Palestinians who bombed themselves, right? And then after that, over 29 more hospitals get bombed, and mum's the word. Nobody's saying shit. Nobody says anything. And that's what we're used to now. That's why you have to come to this shitty YouTube show to get any semblance of the truth on the matter. But massive shout out here to Sky News, because this is a great segment that is telling the truth on what happened. And every now and then you get a drip in mainstream media of the truth. Like we saw the other day, a reporter on the ground in Gaza, I believe, telling a CNN host, do not call this like a humanitarian tragedy or whatever terminology she was using. Call it what it is. It's a genocide. That's what it is. And that's rare to see on CNN. I mean, we just saw that study that came out, this analysis of all the coverage on, I believe it was MSNBC and CNN. And the way they talk about Russia invading Ukraine versus the way they talk about Israel invading Gaza is fucking night and day. Words like savage and brutal and barbaric and terrorism and war crime, those are used way more in the context of what Russia is doing to Ukraine, and almost not at all in the context of what Israel is doing to Gaza, even though you know how the nature of those conflicts and what they look like. So there you have it. Absolutely devastating stuff. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.